Hi everyone, happy Saturday. My name is Erica and I'm delighted to welcome you to Animals from Ancient Egypt, part of our new Creature Feature series. Creature Feature is an online series from the Harvard Art Museums that offers families and curious explorers of all ages a chance to discover magical creatures across the collections through close looking with museum staff. Before we begin today's program, I want to respectfully acknowledge that the Harvard Art Museums and Harvard University is situated on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Massachusetts people, and we strive to honor this relationship. I also want to share a bit about how you can participate today. Please take a look at the bottom of your screen and find the chat box. During the talk, Jen will discuss several objects from the Harvard Art Museum's collections and ask you questions about what you see. You may have to ask an adult for help, but you can type your answers to these questions in the chat box, or you can tell them to the person you're watching with, or both. I'll read these answers out loud as we go, and we'll also keep an eye on the chat in case you have other questions. As a reminder, we are using the webinar format in Zoom, so your videos and microphones will be turned off the whole time. Okay, now Jen and I would like to tell you a bit about ourselves. My name is Erica, and I work in the Division of European and American Art at the Harvard Art Museums. I get to work on a lot of different projects, but one of my favorite parts of my job is helping with programs like this.
And I'm Jen, and I teach students and other visitors with works of art from all across the Harvard Art Museums. But my specialty is ancient Egypt. So it's especially fun when I get to talk about that. And that is what we're going to be doing today. And we're actually going to talk about all 4 of the animals that you see here. And since this is a creature feature, I also want to introduce you to my cats, Newt and Neith, 2 of my favorite creatures, who are named after ancient Egyptian goddesses. And you might even see them pop by in the background because they like to come and visit me while I'm working. And before we start, I want to remind you about our activity book, Coloring Ancient Egypt, which you can download for free on our website. And Erica is going to put the link to this in the chat now. I have my copy here. And if you have this book handy, either on your computer or if you've printed it out, then I invite you to color along as we go, because we're going to be looking at some of the objects from this book today. Let's start with a big question. What are some animals that you see in your life today? Now you can type your answer in the chat. And if you're watching with someone, you can also turn to them and discuss. What are some animals you see in your life today? Maybe you're thinking of animals you see outside, or animals in your home, or stuffed animals, or animals in stories.
Oh, we've got some good answers here. We've got birds, squirrels, dogs, fish, mice.
Mice, yeah.
Ostriches, that's a fun one. Cow, skunks, bears and pandas and rabbits. People see all sorts of animals in their lives.
Wow, some of those sound like pets and some of them definitely don't sound like pets. That's a lot of different animals. That's great. So there are so many different creatures in our lives. Some of us have pets. Some of us see animals outside. Some of us eat animals as food. And some of us read books about animals or make drawings of animals. Animals are important to us today for lots of different reasons. And they were important to the ancient Egyptians for lots of different reasons too. We're going to explore what the ancient Egyptians thought about the animals in their lives. We'll start in Egypt, which is here in Africa, and it's just by the Mediterranean Sea. And the Nile River, which helped the plants grow, runs right down the middle. And this is what the Nile River looks like. The land next to the Nile River was a place where lots of things could grow that animals could eat, and it still is today. And it's also really close to the desert. So there are lots of different habitats in Egypt, and there were lots of different habitats in ancient Egypt. And that means that there were lots of different animals, including ones that lived in the Nile River, ones that lived in marshes, ones that lived in the desert, ones that were raised by people for food or to help them work, and also a lot of birds. So now we're going to travel up to the third floor of the Harvard Art Museums. This is our ancient Egyptian gallery, and I'm wondering if you can see any animals in this photo. Let me know in the chat.
Oh, someone sees a bird right away.
Oh, right away. There we go.
And someone else is saying a more specific word for a bird, a falcon.
Whoa. We'll get there. You're right.
So those seem to be the most obvious. Oh, but someone maybe sees a kangaroo or a lion-headed human body.
Yeah, right here we have two objects where they have the bodies of people and the heads of lions. That's right. What about over here?
A lot of people are seeing a cat, maybe on the
Yeah,
side.
right there. Yes. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but right above that cat, we have got another bird, actually. We have an ibis bird, although it's just the head. One thing you can't see in this photo is that right over here, there are some fabulous horses too. So that's great. You're very observant, and we will come back to one of these objects. So there are lots of different animals in this room, and there are a lot more sleeping quietly in our museum storage. But since we are online, we can have a look at some of those animals together too, which we wouldn't be able to do if we were in person. And the first creature we're going to look at is not in the gallery. It's this guy. My friend Liz at the museums went to visit him in storage just the other day to take this picture. You might recognize him from the book. He's on page 14, and he is a crocodile. Now, what are some words that come to your mind when you think of a crocodile? I'd love you to tell me in the chat.
Ooh, some people think they're scary. Reminds them of the Nile. They have teeth. Sobek, stealthy, cute, swamp. There's so many different descriptions.
Oh my gosh, I love stealthy. I wonder if anyone's thinking of the way that they walk. I also love the mention of the teeth. I think of them as having these very, very sharp teeth. If someone said they're scary, all of those are great words to describe a crocodile. And there aren't too many places in Egypt where you can find crocodiles today, but in ancient Egypt, they were a common sight in and around the Nile River. And we know that people were scared of them because of stories and other things the Egyptians wrote down where they say that they were afraid of them. They talked about protecting themselves from crocodiles and about crocodiles being dangerous. In Egyptian stories, people who did bad things were sometimes eaten by crocodiles or by monsters that were part crocodile. So if you went in or near the Nile River in ancient times, which people did a lot, you were at risk of running into a crocodile, and you probably wanted to avoid that. Can you imagine how big a crocodile is in real life? Maybe you can use your arms to show how big you think a crocodile is, or you can think of something that you know that might be as big as a crocodile. Tell me in the chat.
What might be the same size as a crocodile? Oh, some people are saying surfboard.
Oh, that's such a good example.
That is a good example.
Also for the water, right?
A bus, a table. We've got some people that are also making specific measurements as guesses. 6 feet, 8 feet, about 2 meters. And then, you know, as big as a canoe, a couch, There's so many good guesses here.
Yeah, and I think all of those things are pretty big things. They're things mostly that are bigger than us, right? Nile crocodiles can be more than 15 feet long. That is about as long as a car. They're one of the largest reptiles in the world. But our little crocodile is only about 1.5 inches long. It's small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. So maybe that makes it a little less scary. Now, do you see that hole there underneath our crocodile's chin? Now that you know how small this is and you see that hole, what do you think that hole might be for? Tell me in the chat.
Oh, a bead perhaps, pendant, necklace, and then for wearing it or hanging it.
Great. Wow, you're all so observant. I think we're imagining that you would put a string of some kind in that hole so that you could hang this up or wear it. And you're exactly right. So this little crocodile is a type of object called an amulet. And an amulet is something that a person wears or carries around to give them special abilities or to protect them. And maybe you have something that you wear or carry around to protect you. An ancient Egyptian person probably wore this crocodile amulet because they believed that it could protect them from real crocodiles. It's kind of like, because this amulet represents something dangerous, it could keep away or cancel out the danger of the real creature. But I don't want you to think that crocodiles are all bad. No animal was purely bad to the ancient Egyptians. In fact, crocodiles also had a special relationship with the Egyptian god Sobek, whose name you see here. And I know someone mentioned this when we brought up the crocodile at first too in the chat. Sobek was a god of water, which isn't surprising because crocodiles spend a lot of time in water. And he was also a god who the Egyptians believed helped the plants and other things to grow. So even creatures that people were afraid of could be seen in a positive way. And maybe the person who owned this amulet was also thinking about all the good things that have to do with the god Sobek when they wore it. Now we're going to move on to our next creature, which is right here in the gallery on this wall. This object is a little more than a foot tall and a little more than a foot wide. It's about the size of a cereal box. And it's made from a stone called limestone that's been carved so that the pictures you see are raised up off the surface. So if you were to touch this object, you would be able to feel all of those lines that you see. The first thing I'd like you to do is type in the chat any words that describe what you see here.
We have a few people who I think anticipated this question. They were ready. Seeing a cow, maybe a horse, a rider, perhaps an ox. They're seeing rock and some ropes, and perhaps a livestock being shoed. A lot of great ideas here.
Wow, that's wonderful. I think there are some people who are really familiar with different kinds of animals. That's wonderful. So we have this person here, there's a man here, and someone mentioned rope. You can see there's a rope in his hand and it wraps around the back of his body and comes back here. And that rope comes up and it's in sort of around the cow and around the cow's foot there. This is a cow, our featured creature for this object. Maybe you've also noticed that there are some sort of marks on the stone here. I know what someone said, rock, that this object has been through a little bit. It's not in its original condition. Anything else that you see?
People are seeing a person, hieroglyph character.
Yeah, that's
perhaps a plow or a water buffalo.
So this is a cow, and I was hoping someone would put those hieroglyphs up at the top. They actually spell out one of the Egyptian words for cow, Iwat, Iwat. And if you want to color this cow as we talk about it, it's on page 6 of the book. Now, what kind of object is this? Well, when someone died in ancient Egypt, their family might bury them in a place that we call a tomb. And the walls of those tombs were often decorated. This object comes from the wall of a tomb that belonged to a person who lived more than 4,000 years ago. That's a really long time. But even though it's been so long, we actually know the name of the person whose tomb this comes from. His name was Neanchnesut, and like all Egyptians, he believed that when he died, he would keep on living in a place that we call the afterlife. It would be like life on Earth, only better. Neanchnesut wanted to have a very nice afterlife, and that meant that he needed to have the things that he had when he was alive, including food. So that's what this cow is doing here. And I'm sorry to any of the vegetarians in the room. By decorating the walls of his tomb with pictures of animals that he could eat, Neanchnesut would be able to eat those animals forever in the afterlife. And the man here holding the rope, that's not Neanchnesut. It's another person who's bringing this cow for him. And there were other parts of Neanchnesut's tomb that showed more animals and other foods that he could eat, like fish, birds, fruit, and bread. If you could eat any food every day, forever, what would you pick? Tell me in the chat.
That's a good question, Jen. Ooh,
I don't know if I can answer it for myself, but I'm so
there's
curious.
so many good ideas. Raspberries, ice cream, pizza, fried rice, tacos, pasta, mac and cheese.
Oh, I'm on team mac and cheese. I think I would vote that. My team, it would say mac and cheese here instead of cow. That's excellent, and sounds really delicious. The great thing about objects like this is that even though they show things that were meant for the afterlife, they also give us a chance to learn about what people did and what was important to them when they were alive. That means that we can learn about their relationships with different kinds of animals too. Egyptian artists often showed animals behaving the way they did in real life. They lived in the same place as these animals, so they knew them well. Do you see the way this cow bends its front leg like that and turns its head back to look at the man? If you ever meet a cow, you'll find that those are things a cow would really do. One of the reasons why we put this object in our coloring book is because it doesn't have any color on it. So you get a chance to be creative and add the colors that you want, and you get to bring this man and this cow alive. But we do know that this was once painted. And that's because we have another part of Neanchnesut's tomb at our museum, and it still has some paint on it. It's this one here on the right. And it shows two people. So here's the head and the body. Here's the head and the body. And they're carrying things in their arms. So here and here and here, and also across their shoulders. There's something here and here. They're carrying pieces of meat to Neanchnesut so that he can eat them in the afterlife. Neanchnesut's tomb was discovered about 100 years ago, and parts of its walls were taken out of Egypt. You can find them in lots of different museums today. Nowadays, archaeologists never take the things they find out of Egypt. But since we have these objects in our museum now, it's especially important that we try and learn from them. So I'm really glad that we've had the chance to look at them together. let's meet our next creature. It's this creature right here, which you noticed right away at the beginning. And he's about as tall as a cereal box too. This is what he looks like a bit closer. And now you can also see a close-up of his body over here. So in the chat, type some of the words that describe what you see. What kind of animal is this? What parts of the animal can you see? What details can you see? Is there anything that surprises you?
So a lot of our guests today know a lot about these works, I think, because people are identifying this as a falcon and also going by the name Horus, which may have a hawk head. There's also some specific animals, like maybe it's a peregrine falcon. And we're noticing the material. It looks like old stone, perhaps. We're noticing the feathers and the eye. Funny thing on his head, which crown. There's so many details to see here.
That's great. And I don't know if anybody noticed, there's actually another secret animal here, right there. That is a cobra. We call that a uraeus. So there's an extra little bit of animal here, and it's a snake. Excellent. So you notice all of these amazing details, those feathers, which I just think are so fabulous. Maybe you notice these wonderful lines on the legs there and these very sharp talons. There is this gold colored ring around the eye, this fabulous crown. So this is a statue of a falcon, and it's made out of metal, actually not stone. It's a metal called bronze. And that golden bit around the eye is made from gold. It would have taken a lot of time and effort and expensive materials to make this. And that tells us that this object was made for an important reason. My friend Hannah made all of the drawings for our book, and the one that she made of our falcon is on page 10 if you want to color along. I think that her drawing shows all of those details that you noticed even better than the pictures that we just saw, especially those feathers. Now, remember how I said that crocodiles had a special relationship with the god Sobek? This is kind of similar, and someone did mention Horus already. Falcons had a special relationship with the god Horus, who was the god of the living kings of Egypt. So this falcon statue represents the god Horus, and he's also wearing the same crown that Egyptian kings would wear. Sometimes the Egyptians showed Horus as a man with a falcon's head, but they didn't believe that their gods actually had animal bodies or animal heads. When they show their gods as all or part animal, it's because they believed that those gods shared the same characteristics or abilities as those animals. Falcons can fly, traveling between the sky and the earth. They can watch what's below them, and they're also great hunters. And all of those things were abilities that the Egyptians believed Horus and their kings had too. Now, there's something very special about this bird, and we only know about it because we have X-rayed this statue. That's the X-ray of it here on the right. Maybe you or someone you know has had an X-ray before to investigate broken bones. In the museum, X-rays let us see the insides of objects without opening them up or damaging them. They're very useful. Here's a close-up of the X-ray. You can see that there are pieces of something sitting inside our statue. Some of them are really long and thin, like here. Those are bird bones, and they're part of an animal mummy. It's the mummy of a bird, probably a falcon, and it's been preserved inside this statue for more than 2,500 years. In the book, you can draw what you think the bird mummy looks like inside the statue on page 11. I'd love to see what you come up with, so please share those drawings with us. Now, Do you see anything here that gives us a clue about how they put that bird mummy inside this statue? Tell me in the chat.
A lot of our friends today did guess that there was a mummy and perhaps a bird inside. And oh, they're noticing something on the bottom of the tail that looks like an opening or a little square patch.
Yeah, right here. That's great. The other day when we were practicing for this talk, some of our friends at the museum thought maybe the legs come off or maybe the crown comes off. But you're right, it's actually this little patch that's a sort of rectangular shape underneath the tail. So they would have put the mummy in through there and then patched it up. You might be wondering, why is there a mummy inside this statue in the first place? The Egyptians mummified some of the animals that had special relationships to their gods, and cemeteries for animal mummies have been discovered at lots of different places in Egypt. People could give animal mummies to the gods in their temples as a way of showing their love for the gods, or to send a message to the gods, or to answer their prayers for things like a long life and health. If you had enough money, you could buy a statue like this and put the mummy inside. So this statue tells us about a prayer that someone made more than 2,500 years ago. Our final creature appears on another object meant for an animal mummy. The creature is a snake. Here he is on top of this box. The mummy isn't inside this box anymore, but we can guess that it would have been a snake, or maybe it was only part of a snake because this box is only about this big, around the size of a toy car. It was given as a gift to the god Atum, who was a creator god who had a relationship to the sun, especially the setting sun. This object is really special because it has the name of the person who gave it to Atum written on it, along with their prayer, right here on the front in hieroglyphs. It says, Atum, give life to Pawah Osiris, son of Samtik. I think it's amazing that we know the name of the person who gave this box and the mummy inside to the god Atum. And if you're wondering, this is Atum's name. It's those first three hieroglyphs right there. There's a drawing of this object on our website, actually, where you can see the hieroglyphs a bit better. It's not in the coloring book, but you can still save it or print it out and color it in if you want. And if you have a look on our website, I think you'll find many other statues and boxes for animal mummies, including shrews, cats, and ibises. There are lots of other animal objects in our museum too, and we have a list of them to share with you. I'm so glad you joined me for this creature feature today. I think we saw that animals were part of people's lives in ancient Egypt in lots of different ways. Some of those ways might remind you of the way you think about animals, and others might be new to you. We're very lucky to have these creatures at the Harvard Art Museums, and we learn more about them every time we teach with them and every time you ask a question about them. If you have any questions, please feel free to send us an email, and we'd also love it if you would share your creations from the coloring book with us. On behalf of our scaly, feathered, and four-legged friends, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. As Jen mentioned, we would love it if you'd like to share your creations with us. You can share your artwork from Coloring Ancient Egypt by tagging us on social media or emailing us a photo. We'll also send a follow-up email to everyone who attended this morning with that information, a link to the coloring book, and a link to a special online collection of other fascinating animals from ancient Egypt in the Harvard Art Museums. I want to warmly thank Jen and all of you for spending your morning with us exploring animals from ancient Egypt. Have a great Saturday.